You know, we usually think of stress as this bad thing, right? Something we should run away from. But what if I told you that the right kind of stress is actually the secret ingredient for growth? Today, we're going to dig into that powerful idea by looking at two worlds that couldn't seem more different. Okay, so what does a bodybuilder have in common with a baby calf? I know, it sounds like the start of a really weird joke, doesn't it? But the answer reveals something super fundamental about how all living things adapt and grow. So stick with me, because figuring this out is kind of the whole point. So look at this. On the one hand, you've got this physique that was literally built by looking for physical stress, for pushing limits. And on the other, you've got this little animal where it seems like avoiding stress is the number one priority. So how can both be right? To get to the bottom of this puzzle, let's first dive into how muscles are actually built.
All right, first stop, the gym. Now, the goal here seems pretty simple, right? Get bigger, get stronger, but the way it actually works, it's not what you'd think. It's really this wild cycle of controlled destruction and then repair.
Okay, get this. To build muscle, you first have to break it down. It's a totally backward idea, I know. The growth isn't actually happening while you're lifting. It's the body's reaction, its response to the damage you just caused. And it turns out there are three main types of stress that get this whole process started. First up, we've got something called mechanical tension. This is basically the heavy lifting part. When you're straining against that weight, that force is literally yanking on and disturbing your muscle fibers. That disturbance is like a loud alarm bell telling your body, hey, we need to get stronger so we can handle this load next time.
Then you've got muscle damage. You know that soreness you feel a day or two after a really tough workout? Well, that's a sign of tiny, microscopic tears in your muscle tissue. And here's the crazy part. That's not a bad thing. In fact, it's absolutely essential. This damage is what kicks off the repair crew, the whole process that ultimately builds the muscle back bigger and stronger than it was before. And finally, number 3 is metabolic stress. If you've ever done a ton of reps and felt that intense burn, yeah, that's what we're talking about. It's caused by a buildup of all these chemical byproducts, like lactate. Think of it like a chemical soup inside the muscle that sends another powerful signal for the body to adapt and grow. So when you put it all together, you get this really simple cycle, right? You apply stress, you cause a bit of damage, you initiate a repair, and boom, you grow stronger. It's stress, damage, repair, growth. Simple. Now, I want you to hold that thought, because we're about to pivot to a totally different world. Okay, so we're trading in the dumbbells for a pasture. We're leaving the gym and heading to the farm. And here, we're still talking about growth, but the whole philosophy on stress is completely flipped on its head. We're going to talk about weaning. That's the process of separating a young calf from its mother. Now, for a young calf, weaning is one of the most stressful things it'll ever go through. And this is so important. Unlike the bodybuilder who uses stress as a tool, for the calf, stress is a huge, huge problem. This isn't that productive, targeted stress we saw in the gym. This is harmful, overwhelming distress. And the fallout from this kind of stress is really serious. Stressed out calves, they often just stop eating and drinking. Their immune systems tank, which makes them way more likely to get sick, and all of this leads to some serious weight loss. Farmers actually have a term for it, high shrink loss, which is the exact opposite of the growth they're aiming. So you might be asking, how do farmers deal with this? Well, they've come up with a few different methods, and each one has a totally different stress level. You've got abrupt separation. Just rip them apart, which is, as you can guess, super high stress. Then there's fence line weaning, where they can still see and touch each other through a fence. That's a little better, medium stress. But the real game changer, the one that really cracked the code on reducing stress, is something called two-stage weaning. And this method is it's genius, and it's so simple. So in stage 1, the calf wears this little plastic nose flap. It can still hang out with its mom, it can be right there, but it just can't nurse. After about a week, it's pretty much weaned itself off the milk. Then comes stage 2, the physical separation. See what they did there? They broke one massive, stressful event into 2 much smaller, much more manageable steps. And the result? The calf's distress is cut way, way down. All right, so let's pause for a second. We have 2 totally opposite approaches to stress, right? One guy is chasing it, the other is doing everything possible to avoid it. And this brings us right back to our big question from the beginning, and to solving this whole puzzle. When you look at them side by side like this, it all starts to click. The bodybuilder's goal is to maximize productive stress.
He's deliberately creating this very specific controlled challenge to force a growth response. The farmer, though, his goal is to minimize unproductive stress. He's carefully managing the situation to prevent that overwhelming distress that actually stops growth and hurts the calf's health. And that right there, that's the whole secret. It's not about whether stress is present or not. It's about having the right kind of stress. The bodybuilder and the calf teach us that stress isn't just good or bad. It's all about the context, the type, and the dose. The real question we should be asking is this the right kind of stress to make me grow? Okay, so what does this all mean for us, outside of the gym or the farm? Well, this principle is universal. It's a rule for pretty much any kind of growth you can think of, whether you're learning an instrument, starting a business, or just trying to become a better person. The key to all of it is finding that sweet spot, that perfect little zone between a healthy challenge and harmful distress. If you have too little challenge, nothing happens. You stagnate. But if you have way too much stress, you just burn out. You get anxiety, you break down instead of having a breakthrough. Real growth happens right on that edge. So I want to leave you with this question to think about for yourself. Take a look at your own life. Where do you need more challenge? Where do you need to introduce some of that productive stress, that healthy damage to spark some new growth? And on the flip side, where is unproductive distress just holding you back? Where do you need to be more like that farmer, gently managing things to give yourself the space to develop? The answer? Well, that's the key to your own growth.